Everything changed for Aubameyang with one phone call in 2021. His mother had suffered a stroke and was in the hospital. He didn't think twice. He told the club he had to be with her in France. They allowed him 24 hours to return, but when the moment came, he made a different call. Seeing her condition, he decided to stay an extra night so he could bring her back to London himself. At first, it seemed fine. He made it back in time for the team meeting. Everything was in order. But then, he found out that, because of COVID regulations, his delay meant he had to miss the next match. Most people understood. But Arteta, he dragged him into a private room, berated him for sticking a knife in the club's back, stripped him of the captain's armband, and froze him out of the squad. This wasn't just any player. This was one of the most beloved figures in that team, among the players, the staff, the fans, not to mention one of the deadliest strikers on the planet. A guy who had averaged a goal or assist every 102 minutes, nearly one per game, for 9 straight seasons, until Arteta arrived. At his peak, Aubameyang was a top 10 player in the world. Dortmund even claimed he could run a 30-meter sprint faster than Usain Bolt. Newspapers called him the heir to Henry's throne, but after that day, his career was never the same. In his own words, "I never expected that from him. He killed me." Aubameyang had worked his way up for years. He went unnoticed by most fans until the age of 25. And overnight, Arteta robbed him of his legacy as one of football's greatest late bloomers. His reputation was tarnished forever. Most people don't know this, but Aubameyang started as an AC Milan reserve player, training among legends: Ronaldo, Inzaghi, Pato, Pirlo, Kaká, Seedorf, Maldini, Cafu, not because he was a top talent, but because his father worked as a scout for the club. And how did he get that job? By sheer luck. He missed a flight, hitched a ride with AC Milan CEO, and during that trip, it came out that he was not just a former French top-tier player, but also the captain of Gabon's national team. That conversation landed him a job that allowed him to fast-track all his kids into Milan's system. First Catalina, then Willie, and finally, Pierre-Emerick. But Milan had already seen one of his brothers shine in their academy and still end up discarded. So when Aubameyang got his first pro contract, he didn't waste time dreaming about making Milan's first team. He demanded a loan move. He ended up at Dijon, playing under a coach who had once been his father's teammate. At first, it seemed like the right decision. At 19, he scored 10 goals in his debut season. That summer, he was featured in World Soccer magazine and loaned out again, this time to Lille, with an option to buy. He was even getting call-ups for France and Italy's U21 national teams. But instead, he followed in his father's footsteps, choosing to represent Gabon. In the 2012 Olympics, he was even spotted training with his national team in a public park. At Lille, things didn't go as planned. The team was stacked with young stars like Eden Hazard and Gervinho, and he struggled to shine. So Milan moved him to Monaco, hoping he'd find more opportunities. Instead, they dropped to the bottom of the table. When a new manager came in, Aubameyang was sent back to Milan, tail between his legs, asking for one more chance. And that's when everything changed. By the time he arrived at Saint-Etienne, he was 22, had already played for 4 clubs in 18 months, and looked destined to follow his brothers into obscurity. But then he got some news. He was about to become a father. And as he put it, hearing that I was going to be a dad made it all click for me. I wanted my son to be proud of me. I wanted to be his hero, just like my dad was mine. His form improved, but his manager, Christophe Galtier, still wasn't sure. But when he noticed that Aubameyang spent his entire summer break at the training ground, repeating drills over and over, he decided to give him a full season to prove himself. And in Galtier's words, when we arrived at preseason, he wasn't the same man. He had become a war machine. By December, Saint-Etienne had already called Milan to make the transfer permanent. Up to that point, Aubameyang's best goal tally was 4 in a season. That year, he hit 18, Saint-Etienne's best in 14 years. He added 8 assists, too. Fans barely noticed when their star player, Dimitri Payet, left the club. His teammates said, "Our whole strategy was just winning the ball and launching it forward. Aubameyang was so fast, he'd always get there first." He started showing up to matches in diamond-studded boots. He celebrated goals with a Spider-Man mask in honor of his childhood hero, Jeremy Janot. He led Gabon to their first ever Africa Cup of Nations knockout stage, scoring or assisting in every single game. Even though they crashed out on penalties, he finished as the tournament's top scorer. The next season, he hit 31 goal contributions, outscored Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the league, and led Saint-Etienne to their first trophy in 32 years. Big clubs came knocking: Manchester United, Manchester City, Newcastle, but he chose Dortmund. Not because they offered the most money, but because he saw Klopp turn Lewandowski into the best striker in the world, and he wanted that for himself. It turned out to be the best decision of his life. On his debut, a hat trick. By February, he had 16 goals in 17 starts. Dortmund fans fell in love with him instantly. When Lewandowski left, they signed Ciro Immobile to replace him. Aubameyang had to prove he was the better man. He did it so convincingly that, by February, Immobile had just 3 league goals while Dortmund sat at the bottom of the table. Meanwhile, Aubameyang went on a tear, delivering 14 goal contributions in 15 games, dragging them from relegation to a Europa League spot. By summer, Immobile was out, and Aubameyang was Dortmund's new golden boy. Then Tuchel came in and made him the star. Aubameyang became the Bundesliga's top scorer, outshining even Lewandowski. He won the German Cup, broke records, and even outscored his own idol, Thierry Henry, in a single season. But when PSG refused to meet Dortmund's price tag, he was forced to stay another year, cementing his status as a club legend, whether he wanted to or not. Eventually, Arsenal came calling. The move? A roller coaster. He won a golden boot, saved them from mediocrity, won the FA Cup almost single-handedly. But then, Arteta happened. And the rest is history. From an AC Milan reject to one of the deadliest strikers of his generation, from training in public parks to captaining Arsenal, from scoring in Spider-Man masks to breaking records in the Bundesliga. Love him or hate him, Aubameyang's story is the definition of a footballing saga.